We're told that small towns are the heart of America. Quiet, safe, friendly, a place where you can leave your doors unlocked. But what if that's a lie? What if some of the most dangerous places in the country aren't in the big cities, but on a quiet street corner in a town with a past so dark? The locals will tell you, you should never walk past here after dark. Tonight, we're hunting for those checkpoints, exact spots where a history of racial exclusion meets modern-day danger. These aren't just random towns. These are places with a specific, chilling pedigree. Former Sundown towns, which for generations enforced a rigid, often violent, policy of racial segregation. Signs at the town limits would warn Black Americans and other minorities, don't let the sun go down on you. It was a threat, not a suggestion. The enforcement of these unwritten laws ranged from police harassment to outright mob violence. The Civil Rights Act of 1968 legally tore down this system. But a legacy that toxic doesn't just vanish. It seeps into the soil, into the foundations of a community, and it changes shape. The warning signs might be gone, but new checkpoints emerge. They are specific streets, abandoned buildings, or desolate parks where the echoes of that old hatred have mutated into new forms of peril. Our mission is to find these lines, to travel to the places that carry this dark past and to ask, where are the checkpoints now? We're going to uncover where a history of telling people where they couldn't be has created the places you shouldn't be today. This is a journey from a dark past to a dangerous present, exploring the small-town checkpoints you should never walk past after dark. Section 1. Anna, Illinois. The acronym of HATE, our first stop, takes us deep into the rolling hills of southern Illinois, to a town with a deceptively gentle name, Anna. But for over a century, that name has been twisted into a hateful acronym, a piece of local folklore so potent it has defined the town's identity for generations. Locals from surrounding areas will tell you what they've always heard Anna stands for. I-E-I-N-O, a racial slur, aloud. It's perhaps the most notorious sundown town in a state that, surprisingly, had hundreds of them. The past, an origin forged in violence on a story as a sundown town, isn't subtle. It's a brutal tale of expulsion. The town's definitive turn happened in 1909, following the lynching of a black man, William Froggy James, in the nearby town of Cairo for the alleged murder of a white woman from Anna. A wave of racial terror swept the region. White residents of Anna and its twin town, Jonesboro, used this event as a pretext to systematically drive out their entire black population. Mobs formed, threats were made, and the message was clear: leave now, and don't ever come back. And they didn't. Census records show a stark demographic shift. The small black population that existed before 1909 vanished, and for decades, Anna remained an exclusively white enclave. For much of the 20th century, physical signs were reportedly posted on highways like Route 127, warning black people not to be caught in Anna after dark. These weren't just artifacts of a distant past. These signs were visible into the 1970s. This created a psychological wall as much as a physical one. Black families for counties around knew that Anna was a place you passed through quickly if you had to pass through it at all. You didn't stop for gas. You didn't stop for food, and you certainly didn't live there. The town's name became a self-fulfilling prophecy, a verbal checkpoint that communicated exclusion as effectively as any signpost. The bridge, a reputation that lingers. The Fair Housing Act of 1968 made such explicit discrimination illegal, but you can't legislate away a reputation carved from a century of hate. Even today, Anna struggles to escape its shadow. While some community efforts have been made to acknowledge this dark history, the demographic and psychological legacy persists. The town remains overwhelmingly white, and the acronym, though not spoken in polite company, is still widely known. It hangs in the air, a ghost of the town's own making. This lingering reputation creates a unique tension. For decades, the entire town was a checkpoint, but as the world changed and the explicit rules dissolved, where did that danger settle? When we looked at the town today, we found that the danger hasn't disappeared. It is simply concentrated. The present checkpoint. The southwest side. While official statistics show Anna's overall crime rates are near or slightly below national averages, that doesn't tell the whole story. The danger is not uniform across the town. Data points to one area in particular. The southwest part of town. Here, your chance of becoming a victim of a crime can be significantly higher than in the much safer eastern part of the city. This is on the same danger as in 1909. It is not the organized racial terror of a mob. Instead, it's a modern cocktail of socioeconomic distress. It's a mix of poverty, property, crime, and assault that is settled in a specific geographic pocket. The very nature of a sundown town was to create an inside and an outside, a safe space for the right people, and a hostile world for the wrong people. For decades, that line was the town border itself. Now, it appears that line has been redrawn within the town. The southwest side of Anna has become the new other side of the tracks. So, the checkpoint has shifted. It is no longer the sign on the highway warning black travelers to keep moving. The new checkpoint is a neighborhood, a specific cluster of streets in the southwest where residents face a disproportionate risk. It's a place where the legacy of exclusion didn't just evaporate. It festered. It became a pocket of modern danger, a place where locals might warn you not to walk after dark. Not because of the color of your skin, but because of the ambient threat that has taken root there. The ghost of Ain't No, allowed still haunts Anna, but today it points not to the town limits, but to a specific corner of the town itself. The story of Anna shows how a legacy of explicit racial hate can fester into concentrated pockets of modern struggle. But not every sundown town wears its history the same way. Some places didn't just push people out, they erased them entirely. Our next stop takes us to a place where the checkpoint wasn't just a sign, but a campaign of terror that cleared an entire county, paving the way for a shockingly different and deceptively peaceful present. We're heading to Forsyth County, Georgia. Section 2. Forsyth County, Georgia. The Great Expulsion, Forsyth County, Georgia, presents a different and arguably more chilling evolution of a sundown territory. Today, it stands as one of the wealthiest and fastest-growing counties in the United States. A picture of affluent suburban tranquility just north of Atlanta, but its pristine subdivisions and manicured lawns are built on a foundation of stolen land and buried history. In 1912, Forsyth County wasn't just a place where black people were unwelcome after dark. It was a place where they were violently and systematically expelled, their existence erased from the county for the better part of a century. The past, a racial cleansing. In 1912, Forsyth County was home to over 1,000 black residents, about 10% of the population. They were landowners, farmers, and community members. That all changed in September of that year, after a young white woman, Maycrow, was found assaulted and murdered. The white community's fury was immediately and brutally directed at their black neighbors. A wave of mob violence erupted. One black suspect, Rob Edwards, was dragged from jail and lynched in the center of Cumming, the county seat. 2 other black teenagers were convicted after a sham trial and publicly hanged weeks later. But this was just the beginning. In the weeks that followed, armed bands of white men, calling themselves Night Riders, terrorized every black family in the county. They burned down black churches and homes, fired shots into houses in the middle of the night, and delivered a stark ultimatum: leave Forsyth County or be killed. The terror campaign was devastatingly effective. An estimated 98% of the county's black population fled, leaving behind their homes, their land, and their entire lives. Over 1,000 people were driven out in a matter of months. Their property was stolen and absorbed by their white neighbors. Forsyth County became, in effect, a whites-only territory. For the next 75 years, it remained that way, with a black population of virtually zero. For decades, black Georgians knew to avoid the county at all costs, warned by relatives haunted by the 1912 violence. The bridge, a wall of silence and wealth. For most of the 20th century, the checkpoint in Forsyth County was its county line. It was an invisible wall, enforced by reputation and the threat of violence. When civil rights activists, led by Hosea Williams, held a Brotherhood March in 1987, they were met with a torrent of racist abuse, rocks, and bottles, a violent spectacle that drew national attention. In the years that followed, Forsyth began a dramatic transformation, but not one rooted in reconciliation. As Atlanta boomed, the county became a prime location for wealthy white flight. Its population exploded, and its wealth skyrocketed, but this new prosperity was built atop the silence of its past. The stolen land was now the site of million-dollar homes. The history of the 1912 ethnic cleansing was rarely spoken of publicly. While a small black population has slowly begun to return, now about 4% of the population, the county is still grappling with a legacy it tried to bury: the present checkpoint. The illusion of safety. So where's the checkpoint today, in a place that has exchanged overt racism for quiet, exclusionary wealth? Unlike Anna, you won't find a concentrated bad neighborhood. In fact, on paper, the entire county is the definition of safe, with crime rates far below state and national averages. But this is where the concept of a checkpoint gets more complex. The danger in Forsyth County today isn't about street crime. It's about the psychological and social ramifications of its history. The modern checkpoint is not a place you might get robbed, but a place where the very legacy of exclusion creates a new kind of invisible barrier. For many black people in the Atlanta metro area, the county's reputation lingers. The stories passed down through generations don't get caught in Forsyth after dark still hold power. The checkpoint is the unease, the feeling of being an outsider in a place that violently rejected your ancestors. It is the knowledge that the serene landscape hides a profound injustice that has never been fully reckoned with. The descendants of those exiled in 1912 speak of this, growing up, being warned away from the county, even as they now fight for their ancestors' stories to be told. They face a community that, in some corners, would rather forget. The true checkpoint of Forsyth County, then, is the county line itself, not because of the threat of violence, but because of the weight of history. It's a psychological barrier, a place where the safety you experience depends entirely on who you are and how much you know about the ground beneath your feet. The danger isn't that someone will harm you after dark. It's the unsettling quiet of a place that achieved peace through ethnic cleansing. Forsyth County shows us a past so violent it created a present that is eerily peaceful, where the checkpoint is more psychological than physical. But what happens when the economic prosperity that once defined a place collapses? Our next journey takes us south, to a city in the Arkansas Delta. A place that wasn't a sundown town, but whose history of segregation laid the groundwork for it to become what many now call the most dangerous small city in America. We're going to Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Section 3. Pine Bluff, Arkansas. The Anatomy of Collapse, our third destination. Pine Bluff, Arkansas, offers a different narrative. It was not a traditional sundown town that expelled its black population. It has a long, rich history of African American life. And yet, today, Pine Bluff is consistently ranked as one of the most dangerous small cities in the United States. Its story is one of economic collapse, deep-seated segregation, and the resulting explosion of modern danger. The checkpoints in Pine Bluff are not relics of the past. They are the harsh realities of the present. The past, a center of segregation and struggle. Pine Bluff's history is a microcosm of the Jim Crow South. As a hub of the cotton industry, its prosperity was built on the backs of black labor, governed by a rigid system of segregation. This oppressive environment also made Pine Bluff a crucible for the civil rights movement in Arkansas. It was the site of sit-ins, boycotts, and demonstrations throughout the 1960s as black citizens fought for basic rights. The city even experienced bombings and violent pushback from white segregationists. Its history is marked by lynchings and racial violence dating back to the late 1800s. The fight was not about being allowed in the town, but about being treated as equals within it. This history of a large black population fighting against an entrenched system of white supremacy sets Pine Bluff apart from classic sundown towns. It wasn't about exclusion, but about subjugation. The bridge, economic ruin for much of the 20th century. Pine Bluff was a bustling economic center. But starting in the latter half of the century, its fortunes turned. As manufacturing jobs declined nationwide, Pine Bluff was hit particularly hard. Factories closed. The railroad line that was its lifeblood shut down, and white flight to the suburbs accelerated. The city's population began a steep decline, falling from a peak of over 57,000 to around 41,000 today. As white residents left, the city became increasingly black and increasingly poor. Today, Pine Bluff is not only majority black, but also highly segregated. The poverty rate soared to more than double the national average. The city's infrastructure began to crumble, creating a landscape of urban decay. The fight for civil rights had been won on paper, but the reality that followed was one of economic abandonment. The present checkpoint, TNTRCT. In Pine Bluff, the checkpoint is not a single street corner. For many, it's the city limits. It has been labeled the least safe U.S. small city, with a violent crime rate that is staggeringly high, over 300% higher than the national average. Homicide rates triple those in rural areas, and property crime is rampant. The drivers are clear: extreme poverty, systemic unemployment, and a drug trade that filled the vacuum left by legitimate industry. Gangs took over abandoned factories, stripping them for scrap to fund their operations. The landscape of the city itself became a danger. In some areas, homeowners have boarded up the windows of houses they are still living in, a desperate attempt to deter break. The danger zones are spread throughout the city but are concentrated in areas of extreme blight. Abandoned industrial zones are hotspots for assaults. Navigating the city after dark requires a deep understanding of its fractured landscape. Certain intersections, like Asher and University, are known to be particularly dangerous. The story of Pine Bluff is a tragic inversion of the Sundown town narrative. Instead of violently forcing a minority population out, Pine Bluff's white population largely left, abandoning the city to economic ruin. The racial tension of the past was transformed by economic collapse into a new kind of chaos. The legacy of segregation ensured that this collapse fell hardest on the black community, which now contends with the resulting hyperviolence and poverty. The warning to not walk past certain places after dark isn't a historical echo. It's a present-day survival tactic. Pine Bluff demonstrates how economic decay can turn a town into a modern danger zone. But what happens in a place that went to extreme lengths to enforce racial purity, only to undergo a complete demographic revolution? Our next stop takes us to a suburb of Detroit that was once the poster child for white, exclusionary living, but is now the epicenter of Arab American life. This is the story of Dearborn, Michigan. Section 4. Dearborn, Michigan. The Great Reversal. Dearborn, Michigan is a city of profound contradictions. For decades, it was one of America's most infamous sundown suburbs, zealously guarded against racial integration by its notoriously racist mayor. It was a symbol of northern segregation, a city that employed thousands of black auto workers, but refused to let a single one live there. Yet, if you visit Dearborn today, you'll find a city utterly transformed. The monolith of whiteness has been replaced by a vibrant Arab American community, so much so that Dearborn is now the first city in the U.S. with an Arab American majority. The story of Dearborn is the story of a checkpoint erased and redrawn in the most unexpected way. The past. The Iron Wall of Orville Hubbard. To understand modern Dearborn, you have to understand Mayor Orville Hubbard. He ruled the city with an iron fist for 36 years. From 1942 to 1978, Hubbard was an outspoken, unapologetic. His unofficial slogan for the city was "Keep Dearborn Clean," which everyone understood to mean keep Dearborn white. And he was brutally effective. While Henry Ford's massive River Rouge complex in Dearborn employed thousands of African Americans, not one was permitted to buy a home in the city. They were forced to commute from Detroit. Hubbard used the full power of the city to enforce this exclusion. Police were known to arrest any black person found in the city after dark. Real estate agents were forbidden from selling to black families. Hubbard mastered stoking white residents' fears of integration, creating a crusade against it. The checkpoint was the city line, patrolled with bureaucratic zeal and the threat of police intimidation. The bridge. A demographic tidal wave. How does a city built on such rigid exclusion become the heart of Arab America? The answer lies in global politics and local economics. The first Arab immigrants, mostly Lebanese Christians, arrived in the early 20th century to work in the auto industry, settling in a small, industrial neighborhood in the south. The real shift began in the 1970s, as Hubbard's reign was ending. The civil war in Lebanon, followed by conflicts in Yemen, Iraq, and Syria, sent new waves of immigrants seeking stability. Many were drawn to Dearborn by the established community and jobs. As they arrived, they began to move beyond the traditional enclave, buying homes and starting businesses. But it wasn't exactly a smooth transition. New Arab American residents often faced housing, discrimination, and hostility in public schools. After 9/11s, the community became a target for anti-Muslim activists. But the community didn't just endure, it thrived. They transformed neglected commercial corridors into vibrant hubs of culture and commerce. By 2023, the transformation was official. Census data confirmed that people of Middle Eastern or North African ancestry were the majority. The present checkpoint. New tensions. In a new city. The old checkpoint of Orville Hubbard's, Dearborn, a rigid color line, is gone, overwhelmed by a dramatic demographic reversal. The election of Abdullah Hammoud as the city's first Arab American mayor in 2021 was the symbolic culmination of this shift. But has the danger just vanished? The modern checkpoints in Dearborn are far more nuanced. They are born from the city's unique new identity. Today's tensions aren't about keeping people out, but about navigating the complex social fabric of the people who are now in. The city government, for instance, has worked to address the opioid crisis by installing narcon vending machines, acknowledging a modern danger that transcends ethnic lines. There are ongoing tensions over air quality and pollution in the industrial South, a legacy of environmental inequality. The community's growth has brought its own pressures. The city has had to navigate complex cultural debates, such as those over books in public schools that brought national attention. These debates highlight friction points within a diverse community, composed of people from many different countries and cultures. The checkpoint in today's Dearborn isn't a physical place, but a series of complex social fault lines. The danger of Hubbard's era was simple and brutal. The challenges of modern Dearborn are complex, a reminder that a new chapter always brings its own set of checkpoints. The story of Dearborn is a stunning reversal, but some places are defined not by who they keep out, but by the violent lengths they will go to when someone dares to cross the line. Our next stop takes us to a town whose name is synonymous with mob rule and a ferocious resistance to integration. We are going to Cicero, Illinois. Section 5. Cicero, Illinois. The mob and the riot, just west of Chicago, lies a town whose name has long been a byword for American organized crime. Cicero, the stomping ground of Al Capone. Its reputation for lawlessness was forged in the 1920s. But Cicero has another, equally dark legacy. It was a fiercely, violently segregated sundown town, where black people were met with mob violence. If they dared to make a home there, its checkpoints were not signs, but the fists and torches of its own citizens. The past. An eruption of hate. Cicero's commitment to segregation was put on full display in the summer of 1951. A black bus driver and war veteran named Harvey Clark Jr. rented an apartment in an all-white Cicero neighborhood for his family. The reaction was explosive. When the Clark family first tried to move in, they were met by Cicero police, who threatened Clark and forced him to leave. After the NAACP secured a court order allowing the family to move in, the situation detonated. On July 11, 1951, a mob began to form, quickly swelling to an estimated 4,000 white residents. What followed was a full-blown race riot, broadcasts on local television. The mob went on a rampage, hurling stones, throwing the Clarks' furniture out of the third-story window, and setting their belongings on fire. The local police did little to stop the violence. The chaos became so extreme that the governor had to call in the National Guard, who used bayonets and tear gas to finally restore order. The message was delivered with sickening clarity. This is what happens when you cross the checkpoint into Cicero. The Clark family never lived there. This wasn't an isolated incident. In 1966, a 17-year-old black youth named Jerome Huey was beaten to death by a white mob in Cicero. Cicero's checkpoint was a line of violent, absolute intolerance. The bridge. A changing of the guard for decades after the 1951 riot, Cicero remained a symbol of northern racism. However, like many entering suburbs, Cicero began to undergo a profound demographic shift. The town that had so violently resisted black integration saw a massive influx of Hispanic residents, primarily of Mexican descent. Today, Cicero is a majority Hispanic community. The old guard that formed the mobs of the 50s and 60s is largely gone. But what happened to the danger? The present checkpoint. The persistence of danger after dark today. Cicero's crime situation is complex. While it is no longer the lawless den of the Capone era, danger persists, particularly after the sun goes down. Multiple sources describe a town that sees a noticeable increase in crime at night. Cicero continues to struggle with crime, and while its rates are not always the highest in the state, they are a significant concern. Violent crime, especially robbery, remains a serious issue. The organized crime of the Capone era has been replaced by modern street gangs, a different kind of mob that contributes to the violence. The checkpoints are no longer about enforcing racial purity, but are now the specific neighborhoods and times of day where criminal activity is most active. Residents consider the west part of the city to be the safest, while the east and northeast parts see significantly more crime. The checkpoint in Cicero is now a matter of time and geography. It's the knowledge that the character of the town shifts after dark. It's the awareness that certain streets are safer than others, and that the town's long and troubled history with violence hasn't been fully erased. It has just evolved. The mob that rioted in 1951 is gone, but it has been replaced by new dangers that still make walking certain streets after dark an act of caution. Our journey has taken us through the shadowed corners of small-town America, from the hateful Acronym of Anna, Illinois, to the blood-soaked ground of Forsyth County, from the economic ruin of Pine Bluff to the stunning reversal in Dearborn and the violent mobs of Cicero. Each town tells a different chapter of the same story. The past is never truly past. The hard-lined, racist checkpoints of the Sundown town era, the signs, the sirens, the threats may have been torn down, but their foundations remain. We've seen how that legacy of exclusion can fester into pockets of modern crime and distress, as it did in Anna. We've seen how it can be buried under a veneer of creating a psychological barrier of historical trauma, as in Forsyth County. And we've seen how it can combine with economic collapse to create a citywide danger zone, like in Pine Bluff. We've also seen how these legacies can be completely overturned by waves of demographic change, as in Dearborn, creating new, more complex social checkpoints. And we've seen how a history of mob violence, as in Cicero, can evolve into modern crime that still makes the night a time of caution. The clear, chilling thread connecting all these stories is that the act of systematically excluding people, of drawing a line and declaring one side in and the other out, never leads to true safety. It creates a poison that lingers for generations, breeding instability and inequality. The shadows of yesterday's checkpoints create the dangerous places of today. The lesson from these small towns is a warning for us all. The lines we draw to keep people out often end up trapping danger within. The safest communities aren't those with the highest walls, but those with the most open doors. What do you think? Are there small towns with dark histories in your area that people still whisper about? What are the modern checkpoints that you know of? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you found this journey into the hidden corners of America compelling, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next investigation. Thanks for watching.